Welcome back to another story. This time it's part 2 of Nechronica. Start. The dolls are still walking along the road. They must have been walking for hours, but it's still not any darker or lighter than when they crawled out of the bunker. At some point they came across a long dead squad of soldiers. Port picks up a rifle from one of the soldiers, or more precisely, she picks up a modernized Lottie 20mm cannon. She's able to rattle off a surprise amount of trivia about it. I didn't realize how strong Port would have to be to carry one of these things by herself until some time later. More walking. Port's mind is starting to wander. Notices she doesn't sweat, even though it's warm. Doesn't really feel tired. There's someone else's femur in her leg. Becomes visibly distraught. Protoka strikes up some conversation, tries to cheer her up. Mostly it's small talk, but eventually turns to Protoka herself. How long have you been wandering around before you found me and Tachi anyway? I can't remember. I know it's been a long time. I've been to 2 different oceans. You walked on both of them. Both? Tachi gets an idea and starts digging through the trash along the side of the road as they walk. The conversation dies as the 2 of them watch Tachi scurry around. Port's mind turns to darker things. I want things to go back to normal, but I can't remember normal. I can hardly remember anything at all. Protoka clasps Port's hand. We can carve out our own normal for us. Inside her heart, Protoka swears, anything that got in the way of that dream, she would crush. Tachi sneaks up behind Port while the 2 of them are having a moment and ruffles her hair. We'll do it together. As Tachi joins the other 2, the ground begins to crumble beneath them. A massive sinkhole opens up, and they're falling. They're actually falling really far. Protoka grabs Tachi, and Tachi grabs Port. Protoka puts out a hand and tries to grab something, anything, and her hand finds an outcrop. The momentum whips them around like a yo-yo, tearing off Protoka's arm with a shoulder and reversing the fall order. The ground is coming up. Protoka slams into the ground and completely pulps her legs. Tachi fares better. Her crab legs and metal reinforced skeleton absorb the impact and let her catch Port. They're at an intersection of 3 tunnels deep underground. The only source of light is the hole above them, some ways up. The girls collect themselves. It's clear that Protoka can't continue in this condition, but Port's metabag won't be enough to get her into walking shape. With some effort, Protoka wiggles out of her homemade harness and keeps her coffin strapped to her back. Port and Tachi flip it right side up and bring Protoka alongside it. Protoka fidgets with a small control surface on the coffin's side. Dull green lights along the edge of the lid light up and the door opens. Protoka uses her remaining arm to vault herself over the edge and into the container. I'll be better once the treatment is finished, but until then, one of you will have to carry me. The coffin locks shut and begins to hum gently as it goes to work. Tachi shoulders the precious cargo. Port tries to find a breeze by wetting her finger in her mouth, but doesn't actually produce enough saliva to do more than get it noticeably damp. Her and Tachi pick up a random direction and start walking. It takes a minute, but Port and Tachi notice that the floor of the tunnel isn't actually pebbles as they thought. It's bullet casings. Thousands and thousands of bullet casings. If it wasn't clear, we fluffed Protoka's coffin as a Bacta tank instead of a limb storage, just because she's not really the type to keep meat laying around. Port takes a minute to inspect the cases. They're all full-sized rifle cases. They're also all the same caliber. It's weird, but the 2 of them really have no idea what to make of it. Keep walking. Eventually they come to a fork leading to a huge cavern. 2 paths going off to the left or right. Between them is a yawning chasm that extends way farther than they're able to see. They go left. A little ways into the cavern, they stumble onto the wreck of an old APC, or maybe an IFV. They don't know the make, so it's hard to tell. More casings piled up around it, in addition to the ones on the ground. Port and Tachi pick over it, but the interior is empty and it won't power on. Tachi gets a wild hair, again, tears off the engine cover and starts digging around. Finds and pries out the alternator, disconnects a headlight and strips out some electrical wire with it. Using some kind of cybernetic crab magic, she wires the light up to the alternator and, using her drill to crank the magnet, produces a massive, cumbersome, and overly heavy flashlight. But it is a flashlight, and it's very bright. She gives the cavern a cursory scan. They can't see the bottom or top of the place, but they can light up the other path on the far side. The walls are actually honeycombed with more tunnels, and there are these odd little outcroppings here and there covered in stone bulbs. More military vehicles are scattered here and there, about wherever there's room on the path for them. They're all rusted out and inert. Some of them have serious exterior and structural damage. A lot of them have hatches that have been pried backward from their closed position. Port notices that there's some of those weird smooth stones pretty close by them. Port moves to investigate the weird rocks. Hissing noises. Hissing noises. She looks over to the tunnel opening near her. There's a giant roach monster poised in the opening, screaming bug noises.mp3. The entire cavern lights up with activity. Bug monsters everywhere. They aren't at the party quite yet, but they are coming. Protoka's coffin opens. She's better now. Oh hey, you're right on time. There's no time for an explanation. The squadron of bugs is blocking the Dole's exit. Combat starts. The three blitz forward. Port takes one out of the fight off the bat with her Lottie, basically reducing it to a head and forelimbs. The rest of the fight is similarly quick and dirty, with Tachi and Protoka brawling it out with the hardier bugs, and Port putting craters in the backline spitters. As soon as the squad in front of them is dealt with, the girls book it out of there. A dead sprint down the pathway eventually spits them out of an ancient mine shaft and back into a grassy field. They either outran the bugs or left their territory because they aren't being followed. The dark outline of a megacity looms in the far distance, the first landmark the girls have had since the bunker. Safe for the moment, the girls take a breather to lick their wounds. Port fusses some at Tachi while patching her up because Tachi's managed to get her hands broken in every single fight so far, and really that's just irresponsible. After that, the girls set off on the only bearing they really have, the city. Girls are back on the road, headed towards the city. Before they can reach the outskirts proper, the road slowly becomes more and more choked with dead vegetation, until the three of them are walking under a canopy of petrified forest. Fortifications start popping up along the road. There are small bunkers set along the sides in regular increments, stubby little concrete baubles. Craters have been blown out of the road in some places. ғᴜʀɪᴇs can hear footsteps and shuffling off the side of the road. Protoka creeps forward to check. It's a zombie in military gear, rifle and everything. It doesn't seem particularly aware as it gazes off into the woods. The eyes don't seem to focus on anything as it shuffles. It's just moving out of habit. Even so, the girls move off the road and into the more concealing bushes, where they promptly trip over a huge landmine. It doesn't go off, thankfully. Port takes a quick look at it and figures it must be an anti-vehicle. Its size makes it complete overkill for infantry application. Looking back over the road, she can actually see a few matching detonation switches flush with the concrete, the mines underneath untriggered. That explains the craters. Port: but why would you mine the roads going in and out of a huge city? You can't just stop travel to a population center like that, they'd starve. Protoka: it wouldn't matter if you didn't expect people to be coming and going in the first place, or maybe not want them to. Tachi gets an idea. She pulls up a few bushes by the root and starts carrying them around. Protoka is very suddenly on alert, yanks the other two into a nearby pillbox, motions for them to stay quiet. Tachi stuffs the door with her bushes. A zombie on its patrol shuffles up to the bunker. The girls hold their breath. Port readies her shotgun. The zombie starts pushing aside the bushes. It shuffles into the bunker with his rifle drawn. Port's finger slips over her shotgun's trigger. Protoka tightens her grip on Port and Tachi and lurches backward. A hidden door opens up at the bunker wall, dumping the three of them into a cramped dirt tunnel before slamming shut. After a moment to stop their heads spinning, Port asks Protoka if she's been here before. How'd she know about the door? Protoka can't remember. The tunnel itself is mostly dirt. There's conduit running along the ceiling and walls, but there isn't really any support structure. Emergency lighting sets everything in a dim shade of yellow. The tunnel behind them is a collapsed pile of dirt and rocks, and they can still hear the zombies shuffling around the bunker, so they set off in the only direction available to them: forward. The tunnel is quiet and still. The dolls are the only source of noise or movement. They stumble on a heavy-looking metal door set into the wall. It looks like a heavy-duty blast door. What's this here for? Protoka stiffens up a bit before saying, I think it's a door to a civilian shelter. She looks like she's just seen a ghost. Tachi glomps, Tachi glomps onto Protoka with a hug. Distressed at Protoka's drop in mood, Protoka answers the hug with a head pat and gently peels Tachi off of her. Intrigued by the presence of a hidden bunker in a hidden tunnel network, Tachi and Port start trying to figure out how to open the thing. The keypad that would normally control the door is completely dead, and there doesn't appear to be any other sources of power. There are also no handles on the door itself to open it manually. Protoka pulls the other two away from the door and starts to run her hand along the wall just off to the side. I think I remember where the emergency release is. Crunch. Protoka forces her hand to the wall up to the shoulder and starts reaching around blindly. There's a loud crack from behind the door. Protoka pulls her arm out of the wall and shakes some dirt off of her hand before she catches Port staring at her. What? Port looks slightly abashed. I forget how strong you are sometimes. Or, not exactly that. I forget we aren't human. Protoka puts a hand on Port's shoulder. She looks serious. You are human. Don't let go of that so easily. I am human. In my head. But these... Port taps the new piston assemblies integrated into her legs. And these... She waggles the two middle fingers that form the barrels of her psychoblaster. Are not. But I'm me. We're us. That's the important part. I picked up Hopper with my favor last session. It took us a while to get the hang of integrating part acquisition into the roleplay properly. The girls are able to pry the door open enough that they can slip through one at a time. Tachi is first into the breach, and also the first out, thoroughly spooked by whatever she saw. Port pokes her head in. The door leads into a single dome-shaped room. There's a single emergency light at its apex, casting a dim white light over everything. Skeletons in rags that might have once been clothes covered nearly every inch of the floor. In the far back is a figure, hunched over and facing the wall, cradling a cloth bundle close to its chest as it rocks back and forth slowly. Port edges in, Protoka close behind her. Gingerly stepping over the bones, Port approaches the lone figure. As Port gets closer, she can see that it's a woman, or was before she died. She can also see the top of a small skull, poking out of the bundle in the zombie's arms. She's just out of arm's reach of the zombie now. Gently, she tries to get the zombie's attention. Excuse me, can you hear me? No reaction. Protoka speaks up from behind her. It's pointless. That's just a shell carried by a dying dream. There's nothing there but the ghost of a feeling. Port moves closer to the zombie by a step. I know, but Joy was an echo too, and we helped her. Or at least, we helped her remember herself again. Joy was a collection of memories. That thing is... it's just a moment. Port is beside the woman now. I was just a moment too. In some ways I still am. Protoka's stoicism is starting to turn into concertation now. Not every dead is a doll. Just be glad it's lost and it's loss. There's nothing there but a wisp of a feeling, repeating through eternity. The only mercy we can give something like that. Protoka waves her shovel. Port kneels beside the zombie and carefully, gently, lays her hand on its shoulder. Hello? Can you hear me? This is pointless. It's always pointless. The zombie pauses and looks at Port. It raises its hand as if to cup her cheek, before wrapping its arms around its ribs and letting out a silent hiss of air. Before they can stop it, it dashes its head against a wall. Protoka's face drops and the edge leaves her voice. Pointless. The two of them leave, Port's eyes downcast and Protoka a bit stiff. There isn't anything to be found in the shelter aside from the corpses. Traveling further down the tunnel brings them to another door, just like the one they entered through. The tunnel collapses farther past it. They peek out and the bunker's empty. The party crawls out of the tunnel and makes their way back onto the road. There's a blown out APC sitting off to the side. To Port and Tachi, it pretty much looks like the ones they found in the cave, but Protoka takes a long, hard look at it. That shouldn't be here. That's from somewhere else. Her vision unfocuses and she just doesn't move for a moment. Worried Port.webm. Protoka? Protoka starts talking, her tone distant, and her eyes looking somewhere the girls can't see. I was running. Running was something important. to something important through the tunnels. It's in there. Port. The thing you were carrying? Protocka. I left it behind. Something precious. I have to get it back. Protocka snaps back to reality, suddenly determined. I'm going. Tachi and Port both nod. Okay. They run the rest of the distance to the city. They're close now. The road terminates in a huge ramshackle wall. There are zombie soldiers milling about around the perimeter and a pair of devilish-looking flame turrets flanking the gate to the city. Combat start. The soldiers offer stiff resistance, but the dolls are working their way through them at a steady pace. Tachi is working her way up to the gate, while Protocka is running interference for both her and Port. Port's doing the thing people with big guns do. Suddenly, 2 deafening cracks ring out. The ground next to Port explodes. It's a near miss, but a very, very near miss from something almost as powerful as her Lottie. A pair of red lights dance above the barricade. It's a girl. Her legs below the knee have been replaced with a pair of rocket thrusters. She's been augmented so much that Port can't even see where the metal ends and the flesh begins. She has a cannon for a right arm. Her other bears a set of wicked-looking claws and the housing for a high-powered military laser. The only part of the girl's face that the dolls can see under all the augmentation are her eyes, filled with cold fury and hate. Enter the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie shrieks. Port and the Valkyrie trade fire at range, while Tachi and Protocka continue to move forward. Port hits first, her shot blowing off the Valkyrie's cannon arm. Her second shot takes out the left arm, but not before Valkyrie rakes Tachi with the laser. Her long-range armament's destroyed. The Valkyrie dips out of sight behind the barricade, screaming in fury. But now, there's another problem. The gunfire has attracted robotic pickets from the outskirts of the old military cordons, and they're entering the fight right at the top of Port's position. There isn't much to be done for it. Port makes a fighting retreat to try and regroup with her sisters as they advance towards the gate. She disables one with a round from the Lottie and blows apart another with a Psycho Blaster. The zombies are all mostly dealt with now. Tachi is moving forward to deal with the flame turrets. The Valkyrie is alight again. A pair of short-barreled automatic cannons sprout from her shoulders, and she rakes Tachi from close range with a withering rain of lead. A snapshot from Port's Psycho Blaster smashes into the Valkyrie's head, destroying her mask and taking most of her face with it. She shrieks again. Failed. Failure. You failure. Failed. You'll fail. Failed. You failed. Me failure. Failed. You. But she's flown too low to gain use of her shoulder cannons. Protocka leaps upward and catches the Valkyrie in the bite of scissors, bisecting her at the waist and annihilating her. The Valkyrie vanishes in a glittering cloud of green lights, leaving no trace. There's no time to ponder the oddity. More robot pickets are streaming in from the forest behind them. The girls smash down the gate and rush into the city. The dolls have been scrambling through the city for a little while now, mostly directionless, though every now and then, Protocka gets a look like she knows where she's going. As she rounds a corner, a zombie with a gigantic syringe for an arm leaps up and tackles her. She isn't quick enough to dodge. The syringe pierces her abdomen, and the zombie presses down the plunger. The dolls tear the zombie to pieces, but the effect on Protocka is already apparent. The wound won't regenerate, and Protocka herself starts to look sickly and is not completely steady on her feet. It hasn't come up because I'm bad at remembering combat details, but one of Protocka's big gimmicks is in-combat regen, so this is weird behavior. Examine the zombie for clues. Maybe they can find an antidote for whatever it was Protocka's been hit with. The syringe is embossed with the name of a military base. A good lead as any. They do actually find it. It's a huge rundown warehouse compound filled with heavy machinery. There's a pair of what looks like giant excavators milling around outside the entrance to the main storage area. Unlike the rest of the inert machines around the grounds, these two seem to be moving autonomously. Wires and cables arranged in a twisted facsimile of muscles and tendons obscure the structure of the machines underneath, but the dolls can still hear the engines chugging away from their hiding spot. Port takes a position and takes aim while Tachi moves forward. Combat starts. Port puts a round right through the engine block of one. It's not out of the fight, but it's also not able to actually move anymore. Focus fire on the second. Port and Tachi's combined efforts eventually fell it. Their racket has also alerted some automated defenses along the compound. Robot pickets like the ones that ambushed Port back at the gate have started closing in on them. Finish off the first and move into the warehouse. The details here are fuzzy, so I'll summarize. The session was actually 3 or 4 separate combat phases back to back. In particular, I remember blitzing through a factory floor and a bunch of zombies on catwalks with mounted MGs tearing shit up. Through all this, Protoka is actually still interposing herself in between enemy fire in Port every now and then. By the final room, the entire group is taking a serious beating. Enter the final room. Blaring radio static fills the doll's surroundings, slowly transitions to manic screaming. The Valkyrie appears hovering at the end of the room. She's holding a vial in one of her hands, ostensibly the antidote. Final combat starts. Valkyrie has about 8 more AP than anyone else on the field, so she gets 2 free shots with her AT rifle before anyone can even move. 1 whiff. The other is headed straight for Port. Protoka leaps into the way, eating a high caliber rifle shot. With this hit, she's barely hanging on. Port and Tachi retaliate. A round from Port nearly decapitates the Valkyrie, destroying most of her head. Tachi closes in, blades whirling, and chunks her for big damage. Like with the encounter at the gate, it's Protoka and her scissors that finish off the night, narrowly. The dolls retrieve the vial and apply it to Protoka. It's an antidote, and she begins regenerating her most serious wounds almost immediately. The Valkyrie vanishes in another spray of green sparks. The danger is gone for now, and that's good enough. With the Valkyrie dispatched, the rest of the warehouse seems to have quieted down. Port wanders off to mill around the warehouse, mostly because she's having a high-key panic attack and doesn't want the others to see her right now. Protoka almost died. Protoka almost died protecting her, because she couldn't protect herself. Port doesn't quite go as far as classifying herself as dead weight, but the realizations that she's a soft target and a way to exploit Protoka horrifying to her. Doesn't know what to do. Distracts herself by exploring the arms storage area and making herself geek out over some hardware she finds there. Swaps her shotgun out for a pair of high caliber pistols because 2 long guns is honestly pretty unwieldy. Stumbles onto a store of medical equipment, digs around, still trying to distract herself. Opens a cabinet to find a rack of prosthetic limbs. Hey, wait a sec, she knows what these are. These are Geppetto model field prosthetics. They're for soldiers who need a permanent limb replacement in the field. Rugged, resistant to small arms, easily maintained parts, the nerve wiring and the linkages makes them practically stick on and go. Port gets an idea. She snatches up a set of limbs and books it back to Protoka and Tachi, bursts into the room and slams the limbs down the floor. Protoka, I need your help putting these on. Putting them on? What? Port's already babbling ahead. They're easy to actually attach. They secure themselves into the muscular automatically, but I need you to cuff my old ones first, please. Protoka's eyes widen in mild alarm, but she doesn't question Port. She nods once and grabs her scissors. Arm first, snicked. Oh wow, that actually hurts worse than getting shot. Ow. Biting deep onto her tongue, Port snatches an arm and presses the base of it onto her new stump. The silver wiring at the end weaves into her muscles and skin. In less than a minute, she has full control of the limb. The whole process is quite painful, but over in 5 minutes. The arms are for someone a fair bit larger than her, and she directed Protoka to cut too low on her legs so the match along the thigh isn't quite exact. She's also gained a couple of inches in height. It's awkward, but it works. She can already feel the difference in strength as she tests her new arms with Lottie's weight. While Protoka continues recovering, she takes some time to tinker with her new legs, salvaging the hopper attachments out of her old legs and integrating them into her new ones. After the girls are rested up and have made any acquisitions they cared to from the base, they set off back into the city. After this is where I started taking really detailed notes. Hopefully I'll be able to mostly copy/paste them off the text and improve my rate of posting. We'll see. And that's the end of this chapter of Nechronica. If you enjoyed this story and enjoy stories like them, be sure to like and subscribe to Neckbeardia and click the bell icon so you know when the videos are released through the week. This has been ģerbro, and I will see you next time.
All those moments will be lost in time.